off this countdown, we have Springheil Jack. Was Springheil Jack a mere legend to scare kids and adults, or was he actually a real person? You decide. So back in Victorian England, they had to worry about this terrifying man that would visit homes in the middle of the night. This man would ring the doorbell, and when someone would answer it, he would attack them. He was given the name Springheil Jack as witnesses said he had the ability to jump great distances and heights. Victims say he looked like a man dressed in red shoes and armor. Others claim he would wear loose-fitting black clothes with a helmet. He was also described as having a wicked smile. The very first sighting of Springheil Jack was in October of 1837. A woman named Mary Stevens was walking in her town when a tall man in a coat jumped down from a building right in front of her. He then attacked her and even tried to kiss her. Kinda weird. Someone heard her screams of terror and thankfully came to her rescue. They both saw Jack leap away. After this, more and more women fell victim to Jack. One in fact described him as wearing a very tight-fitted outfit that resembled white oilskin. Well, what if it wasn't an outfit he was wearing, but that was his cold, pale alien skin? This, along with the fact that he could leap and jump high and far distances, is what led people to believe Jack might have been an alien. Moving on to number 9, we have the Lightning Man. Roy Cleveland Sullivan was a well-known forest ranger in Virginia for one reason. He had an attraction to lightning. Over his years, he had been struck by lightning 7 times. 7. And every time, he has been pretty much left uninjured. How is that even possible unless he's not a human? So the first time he got struck was in 1942. He was completely fine, he just lost a nail off of his big toe. Then 27 years later he got struck again. The only thing that happened to him this time was he lost the hair on his eyebrows. Then in 1970 he was struck again. His only injury was a small burn on his left shoulder. In 1972 it happened again and his hair was set on fire. So on and so on. So first off, why does lightning seem to be attracted to him? And 2, how has he managed to survive every strike? Well, there are a couple of theories out there. One is that maybe he's an alien. Maybe his alien buddies from space keep zapping him with their space lasers trying to get him to come back home. And that's why he's never killed. He's not even human at all. He's an alien. In our 8th spot today we have Akhenaten. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then smash that like button. It's believed that Pharaoh Akhenaten was not only in contact with aliens that were controlling him, but that maybe he was an alien himself. Now, if you look at the way he was depicted in ancient Egyptian drawings, it was different than all the other pharaohs and gods. They were often depicted as majestic gods, you know, they were good looking and they were muscular. Akhenaten is drawn the opposite. He's drawn with an elongated face and head, a long neck, small ribs, and a protruding belly. Why would they draw him like this? It must have been an accurate depiction of what he actually looked like, or else that's just insulting. The main fact that people were fixated on though was his elongated skull. Yes, back in the day some cultures would reshape their heads and faces, but they aren't able to add density to their heads. Akhenaten had a disproportionately large head that could not have been created by skull reshaping. So a number of people believe that Akhenaten was an alien, and he was sent down to rule ancient Egypt. Coming in at number 7 we have Osiris. The depictions of Osiris were always quite unusual because he was drawn with green skin. As a result, people think that he's out of this world. What else has green skin? Aliens. For starters, Osiris was the god of the underworld. He was a symbol of death and resurrection. As a result, he was depicted as a mummified bearded king holding a shepherd's crook and whip. According to a famous legend, he was actually killed by his brother who tore his body into 14 pieces. But in the end, he was resurrected by his wife. Now, if this story is true and not an actual myth, isn't it suspicious that a man with green skin died and then magically came back to life? As a result, a number of people believe that he was indeed an alien. In our 6th spot today we have Nina Kulagina. Nina Kulagina was famous in the 1960s for having psychic powers. She had the powers of telekinesis, so she could move objects using her mind. On a number of occasions she demonstrated her powers in front of people. She would place an object on the table and would be able to move it from one end to another. Obviously you had skeptics, so every time she performed this trick, she was carefully observed. She was able to move matches, small boxes, and cigarettes. Even the Russian military got involved and would study her. In the end, she was actually recruited by the Soviet government to work for them. So how could it be that this woman had these powers? Maybe it's because she's an alien. Starting off this countdown, we have Mark Zuckerberg. Rumor has it that Mark Zuckerberg is an alien or a lizard person. Let me explain. In a number of interviews, people notice that Mark Zuckerberg barely blinks. It's true. I've seen videos and this dude must have like some watery eyes or something, cause he blinked like once every minute. He just sat there with his eyes wide open, looking like an alien. Then people went on to say that he wears contact lenses to hide his yellow lizard pupils. Maybe that's why he's so smart, because he's an alien. Either that or he's a robot or something. His weird mannerisms has everyone spooked. Conspiracy theorists are adamant that he's going to take over the world and destroy democracy. It's crazy. Coming in at number 9, we have Jeffrey Bezos. I'm sensing a theme here, okay? People like to think that rich, powerful men are aliens. Jeffrey Bezos, CEO, entrepreneur, born in 1964, is another individual that might be an alien. Also, that was a reference to Bo Burnham. I love him. His song, Jeffrey Bezos, go check it out. Not only is he very intelligent, but people have been studying his mannerisms and think there's something wrong with him. Take a look at this.
But that was actually not supposed to be a bad pun. And then disclosure, you are...
Is it just me, or is his laugh undeniably creepy? He keeps his eyes wide open and locked on his target while laughing. Also, it seems forced. Maybe aliens don't have any emotions, so he has to force himself to laugh at jokes so he seems normal. I don't even know what to think anymore. Also, side note, someone deepfaked Jeffrey into a Star Trek episode, and let's just say I'm now scarred for life.
Is this a deception? Do you intend to destroy yourselves?
Moving on to number 8, we have Alien Barbie. Ukrainian woman Valeria Lukyanova is known as the human Barbie doll. She's got an impossible tiny waist, wide doll-like eyes, and a big bust. In fact, to achieve this look, she had some of her ribs removed. But not only is she a real-life Barbie doll, but she also claims that she's a time-traveling alien. Yes, you heard me correctly. This woman claims that she's not human. She said that she's an alien that has come to Earth to save the world. Little late for that. But what is she saving us from, you ask? Well, she says negative energy. Okay. And she has a goal to transform humans into demigods. I mean, that's cool. I want to be a demigod, so sign me up for that. She also has claimed to be a breatharian. She says that she lives off of nothing but light and air. So maybe she really is an alien, because it's physically impossible to live off of just light and air. Like, you need food and water. Coming in at number 7, we have Grimes. Grimes might just be an alien, and so might be her partner, Elon Musk, but more on him later. But how cute! 2 aliens came from space and connected on Earth. That's what I call destiny and true love. Anyways, if you follow her, then you know she's quite the character. And just recently, she got alien scars on her back. Or at least that's what she calls them. They're just a bunch of light-colored lines that she got tattooed on her back. But maybe aliens actually have tattoos or designs like that on their backs, and she knows something that we don't know. I mean, there's a huge conspiracy out there that Grimes is an alien. Just search on Reddit and you'll find a number of people who believe this theory. Moving on, at number 6 we have Poppy.
Hi, it's me, Poppy. Hi, I'm Poppy.
Poppy is an American singer, songwriter, musician, and YouTuber. She is known for her very unusual videos where she talks in a very soft and high-pitched voice. Is this just her persona or stage act, or is she an alien? Now, there's so many different theories surrounding her. From being part of the Illuminati, to being created by the government, to being a hologram, to even being a robot. I'm telling you, there's tons of theories out there. But a more popular one is that she's an alien from space. Most of this is based off of her mannerisms in her videos and the fact that we hardly know anything about her true self. One video that really started this theory was one where she reacts to a Fine Bros video. In this video, she cited every single word that was shown from her older videos. And she did this without showing any emotions, and without even acknowledging the kids that were reacting to her. It's very weird to say the least.
Hi, I'm Poppy.
You're freaking me out.
I wanted to see you.
What the heck?
Thanks for coming down here with me.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the New Jersey UFO. This UFO sighting took place in 2001 just above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th, 2001, just after midnight for around 15 minutes, motorists driving down the highway stopped to stare at the sky to witness what no one could believe. There were strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation just above the Arthur Kill waterway. There were a ton of witnesses who were all extremely confused and shocked as to what they were seeing. Air traffic controllers initially denied that there were any flying objects that could have caused the mysterious lights, but a group called the New York Strange Phenomena investigators claimed that they received radar data that night that could corroborate all of the stories that the witnesses were telling. It may not have been aliens, but it certainly was some sort of unidentified flying object that no one had ever seen before, and there were people from all walks of life witnessing it together. In our number 9 spot today, we have habitable planets. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. So, we once were on a journey to start off by figuring out which planets were actually habitable. And by that I mean which planets were rocky and which were orbiting a star within what is called the Goldilocks zone and had water, and that they weren't too hot or too cold so that water could be in liquid form. It just seems like the absolute basics needed in order to sustain life. Well, now, after more years of research, it is thought that actually about 1 in every 5 or 6 planets is actually a planet that could potentially sustain life. It is thought that there is roughly about 1 exoplanet for every star in our galaxy. That's a lot of planets, which means that's a lot of planets that could potentially have life. There certainly are planets that researchers believe are the most likely, but that doesn't mean that they are the only ones that should be looked into. Basically, what I'm saying is that there are, at the very least, millions of planets that could be hosting some form of life, whether it's an intelligent civilization or just single-cell organisms that have the potential to evolve over millions of years, just like us. Any kind of life would be a huge and exciting win for the science community, so it's just a reminder to us to keep searching, because we never know what we're going to find. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Stevenville UFO. In January of 2008, in the small town of Stevenville, Texas, a bunch of residents all saw something in the sky that they couldn't believe. In the beginning, it appeared to be white lights in the sky that were first in a single arc, but then they quickly moved to form 2 parallel lines. It was estimated that the lights were spanning about a mile long and half a mile wide, but the craziest part is that it was flying at 3,000 miles per hour, which is similar to the speed of a fighter jet, but there was no sound reported at all. The government chalked this sighting up to the US Air Force flight operation, but many of the residents who saw this event on that day were absolutely not convinced and truly felt like they were lied to. Some even explained that what they saw was too technologically advanced for human civilization. I want you guys to let me know in the comments if you believe the story that the government told, or if you trust the instincts of the people in Stevenville who saw that incident that day. In our number 7 spot today, we have time. This one is basically just the theory that we may not have found aliens yet because we haven't spent enough time looking for them. Realistically, it's been about half a century since we really gained the technological advancements that have allowed us to really look for them. In terms of the universe, that is the smallest little blink of an eye. Things take time, and it's incredibly possible that we just haven't had enough of it yet. Every year, as more money gets put into things like that, it allows incredibly smart and brilliant people the opportunity to create things that unbelievably make space more and more accessible to us. The more accessible it is, the more we will be able to discover. So maybe this is just a lesson in patience for all of us. If aliens do exist, I'm sure we'll find them at some point. Hopefully sooner rather than later, because I personally would like to meet an alien, but since I'm not an astronaut, I might have to wait a little longer than I'd like to. In our number 6 spot today, we have this unexplained UFO. In 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. There weren't a ton of details released about exactly what happened during this encounter, but using a Raytheon Advanced Targeting forward-looking infrared pod, they were able to capture an extremely fast-moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking the UFO at an altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean, and then they were shocked as the craft rotated on its axis and flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and currently unexplainable.
Starting off our list today, we have a 2018 UFO sighting that took place in the skies above North Carolina. Shout out to anyone watching from Elon University. In August of 2018, a man named Javion Hill claims to have spotted a UFO while driving home on US 74 just southwest of Charlotte. He described seeing lights in the clouds above him, shaped like a square. Immediately, he pulled out his phone and began snapping photos, which I have to admit are pretty convincing. After hovering in the sky above Javion for a good amount of time, the illuminated formation just vanished into thin air, as they do. You know how it is. It was as though it had never existed in the first place, but of course it did because there's proof, and we've seen it. And Hill, who says he was never a believer in aliens before that night, claims that during the time in which the object was hovering above him, he was seriously concerned for his safety.
On June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, a private pilot, saw something in the sky near Mount Rainier in Washington, something that he couldn't quite explain. He described 9 strange crescent-shaped objects flying in a V formation. What really caught his attention was how fast these things were moving, at around 1,700 miles per hour, which was faster than any known aircraft at the time. And when Arnold reported what he saw, it ended up getting massive media coverage. The Kenneth Arnold sighting is often referenced as the first big UFO encounter in modern times. After Arnold's sighting, lots of other reports started coming in about strange things in the sky across the United States. The government and military were getting intrigued, and the US Air Force started Project Sign, which was the first official government investigation into UFOs. This later became Project Blue Book, which looked into thousands of UFO sightings to try and figure out what was going on. So is it just one of these cases where he saw something and then everybody else started like getting excited and, just thought they were seeing things? Or was this just the time where UFOs and aliens were starting to come down to investigate things here on Earth?
Next up, we have 2 commercial pilots on different aircrafts claiming to have seen a mysterious flying object in the sky while flying above Arizona on February 24th of 2018. The first pilot to spot the UFO called into radio traffic control to ask if another plane had passed by him. The controller answered no, and then went on to make a joke about the pilot having possibly seen a UFO. Ground control then contacted another pilot flying an American Airlines flight a little bit behind the first plane and asked the pilot to inform the control center if an aircraft were to pass over the plane. And a short while later, the pilot did exactly that. He said that a fast object had flown 3,000 feet over his plane in the opposite direction of which he was going. Once again, ground control had no knowledge of the aircraft, and it didn't show up on any of the radars either. Both pilots later described the objects as illuminated and incredibly fast, saying that they were nothing like the weather balloons they had seen sometimes floating at that altitude before. Plus, there were no records of this object, so what could it have been? Well, a UFO, duh.
Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was the lead investigator of Project Blue Book in the 50s. His job was to investigate reports of UFOs and find any possible explanation for them. Of course, if there was none, it would be categorized as a genuine UFO. French had shot down a lot of UFO reports over the course of his career, but in 1952, he witnessed something himself, something he could only describe as a genuine alien encounter. He kept what he'd seen a secret for decades. It wasn't until 2013 that he testified before 6 former members of Congress in DC, describing an event that happened back in 1952. A number of residents off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland, had reported spotting 2 unidentified unidentified flying objects. So French was tasked with heading over to Canada to basically debunk it. The UFOs had crashed into the water, and when Lieutenant Colonel French arrived, he saw this crowd of about 100 people, including some police, standing by a wharf, gawking at something in the water. French made his way over, and when he looked down into the clear water below, he saw what looked like two large circular aircraft-like objects, and there were apparently two beings working on them. French described the creatures as, quote, 2 to 3 feet tall, light gray in color, very thin, long arms with either 2 or 3 fingers, the top of their heads much wider than their jawline. Their eyes were very slanted, and you couldn't see pupils in them. He then described the objects slowly rising out from the water before abruptly accelerating and taking off into the sky.
Next up, we have the very first record of a UFO encounter to take place in New England, USA, which I bet you didn't know was actually a major hotspot for extraterrestrial UFO and UAP activity. That's unidentified aerial phenomena, for those of you who don't know. The first recorded sighting happened in Boston, New England, and it was also the first ever documented sighting in the US as a whole. It took place in 1639, and credible reports have been popping up ever since. The record was a second-hand observation recorded by colony founder and governor at the time, John Winthrop, who wrote that a sober, discreet man had seen the sky above Boston become illuminated by a green light while he was rowing his boat along the river one evening. The light was still for a moment and appeared to be flaming, and then it morphed its shape and darted off into the night sky towards Charlestown. The encounter lasted for 3 hours, with the object in the sky going higher into the air and then rushing down closer to Earth again and again, back and forth. By the time it ended, which it did when the object just disappeared into the night, the man along with his boatmates had traveled 1 mile upstream with absolutely no memory of how they had gotten there.
This next one has to be the wildest alien encounter case in recent history. So in March of 2023, something strange went down in a small Bolivian village called Horania. It all started with reports of a mysterious green light hovering in the sky. People whipped out their phones to capture the event, having no idea what the hell they were looking at. But unlike a lot of your typical UFO cases, this one doesn't just end with people seeing something strange in the sky. Things get way weirder. So 2 days later, residents claimed to have seen tiny beings darting around the town at night. One villager, Rita Marquez, described them as little and almost like goblins. Some locals even claimed to have found one of these small creatures dead in a gutter one morning, only for its body to vanish soon after. So, a lot to unpack here. Strange lights, possible aircraft, little beings running around the streets at night, and even a mysterious disappearance of one of these dead creatures. I don't know what to make of this case. Whenever there's a whole bunch of witnesses like this, I find it very interesting though.
Starting off this countdown, we have the disappearing Air Force jet. Over the years, a number of military officials have disappeared while exploring UFOs. Take this case, for example. On November 23, 1953, the U.S. Air Defense Command noticed a blip on their radar in a restricted airspace over Lake Superior. Since it was in restricted space, an Air Force jet took off to investigate. There were 2 crew members on board. The men never returned home from the mission. So while out investigating the blip, they got right to the spot where it should be. On the radar, it showed that they were right on top of this blip, but they couldn't see a craft anywhere. Then ground control saw the blip veer off and vanish, as did the men inside of the jet. The United States Air Force, US Coast Guard, and Canadian Air Forces all conducted an extensive search and rescue to try and find the men, but this was sadly unsuccessful. In fact, they didn't even find signs of wreckage. To this day, no one knows what happened to the mysterious UFO, the men, or their jet. Moving on at number 9, we have the Tehran UFO. In the early hours on September 19th, 1976, a shiny object was reported hovering in the skies above Tehran by at least 4 different people. As a result, 2 Imperial Iranian Air Force F-4 Phantom II jets set off to explore this mystery object. However, while nearing this object, their craft began to fail. They were going to open fire on it, but their weapons system was down. Not only that, but officers described the light as, and I quote, flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue lights, so bright that I was not able to see its body. What's weird is that as soon as their jets moved away from the craft, their systems returned to normal. He then watched the craft, and I quote, slow down and land gently on the ground, radiating a high, bright light. The next day, they explored the area where the craft landed, and a number of residents said that they heard a loud noise and a bright flash of light during the night. In our 8th spot, we have the 6 soldiers. This next UFO encounter took place in North Korea in 1951 during the Korean War and impacted a number of Korean soldiers. So in May of 1951, Korean soldiers were preparing to bomb a nearby village when they were greeted by a strange craft. According to the men, the craft emitted some form of a ray that made their airburst start to explode. One man then said that they were attacked by some ray that was emitting pulses. Like a lighthouse light, you could see when it was aimed directly at you and when it wasn't. Well, after this weird attack, the men were left sick and had to be taken to the hospital. Some say that they were attacked by a UFO. Others say that they were attacked by some sort of death ray. To this day, we still don't know what attacked them and what caused them to fall so ill. Moving on at number 7, we have Skinwalker Ranch. Now this place has been known to be filled with supernatural activity. Not only do evil shape-shifting entities roam the land, but apparently aliens and UFOs do too. According to the original owner, Terry Sherman, him and his wife had a number of chilling experiences there. This ultimately led to them selling his plot of land. For starters, in June of 1996, mysterious crop circles kept appearing. Then, on a number of occasions, they saw UFOs hovering around their property. The worst is when they kept finding their cattle completely mutilated. This was not done by an animal, as it was done without bloodshed, and the cuts were very precise. For years, the government and military have been exploring Skinwalker Ranch to try and make sense of this situation. But they haven't, honestly. In our 6th spot, we have Falcon Lake. This incident has been named one of the most famous Canadian UFO encounters. It all started on May 20th, 1967, when 2 glowing objects descended from the sky near Falcon Lake in Manitoba. This was witnessed by a man named Stefan Michalak. Apparently, one of the weird crafts landed close to him, so he decided to investigate, like a dummy, which was a terrible idea. When he got close to it, it suddenly shot back into the sky. The beam of light from the craft as it took off set Stefan's clothes on fire. He was left with a bunch of strange burns on his body, including burn marks on his chest and a pattern of dots. Following the encounter, he fell ill. Now, some people believe the story to be a hoax, but he literally has burn marks on his body and scorched clothes as proof. So it makes you think otherwise.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the mysterious beam. Pretty recently, scientists explained that they captured a mysterious beam of energy that was coming from the star that is the closest known star to the sun, Proxima Centauri. This star is small and low mass and is located around 4.2 light years away from us. The thing about this star is that it has one rocky exoplanet that is 17% larger than Earth in its habitable zone, which would make liquid water a possibility on the planet. This planet's habitability has been disputed throughout the years, but this signal could be a sign that it may be even more habitable than any of us know. Scientists explained that the signal shifted while it was being observed, which mimicked the shift caused by a movement of a planet. They're taking extra precautions to figure out what exactly caused this shift in case it was some sort of mundane source. It will, of course, take some time to figure out, but it's all very exciting. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Venus Cloud. Last year in September of 2020, astrobiologists everywhere were excited and skeptical of some new potential evidence that had been found in the upper clouds of Venus. Firstly, can we just take a second to really think about how cool of a job an astrobiologist has? Anyway, the new findings were pointing to the potential of the presence of phosphine in the clouds. Phosphine is a rare and usually poisonous gas that on Earth is basically always met with the presence of living organisms. Venus hasn't really been top of the list of choices for finding potential life due to its surface temperature and pressure and the sulfuric acid clouds, but this evidence could prove to say something otherwise. 2 separate telescopes were able to pick up the signatures of phosphine in a cloud that had a similar temperature and pressure to Earth, and while this isn't concrete evidence of space bugs, it will at least be a reminder that we should be continuing to look for life even in the most unlikely places. And hey, maybe it is space bugs. In our number 8 spot today, we have Uma Uma. Okay, so this is one piece of evidence that actually has scientists fighting over what is going on with it. So a few years ago, scientists all agreed that we had found an object that was flying through our solar system, and they called it Uma Uma, and it was widely agreed that it was an interstellar comet that had swung out from around another star. But upon closer examination, they realized that something was propelling it and causing it to accelerate, and this is when the debate started, because they just don't know why. Avi Loeb, who's a Harvard University astrophysicist, proposed the idea that rather than a comet, this could be an alien probe that is being pushed by a light sail, which is a very wide but extremely thin piece of material that accelerates by being pushed by solar radiation. Other scientists didn't agree with this and instead said that it's possible that hydrogen ice could have melted off of the object in a way that would mimic a rocket engine or something of that nature. But in August of last year, Avi wrote in a study that hydrogen ice is too easily heated and it would have melted off long before it reached our solar system. I guess we just have to wait it out while the scientists debate and gather more evidence to really know what's going on behind this one. In our number 7 spot today, we have the NASA Viking Experiment. This is one of the more debated ones on today's list, but that does not mean it isn't evidence. In 1976, NASA's Viking landers tested the soil on Mars and found some chemicals that could be attributed to signs of life. The soil was mixed with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas. The test ended up receiving a positive result, which could indicate that something in the soil is metabolizing the nutrients to produce the gas. Despite further efforts, there still hasn't been any life found, but one of the scientists who worked on this original project, and others as well, stand by what they found and argued that the technology at the time wasn't advanced enough to find the key evidence of life. Hopefully with the new Perseverance rover that landed recently, we'll be able to find the signs on Mars that we have been looking for. In our number 6 spot today, we have black holes. When we think of black holes, we usually think of how absolutely terrifying they are, but that may be changing. There has actually been the discovery of a planet that is floating around a black hole. The forces around the hole are also providing heat for the planet as well, but there is one catch, and that is the fact that the planet needs to orbit at the speed of light. This would mean that a second on that planet would be hours on ours, which is kind of difficult to comprehend. The planet would have to be in what is called the Goldilocks zone though, because if it's too far from the black hole, it'll be too cold and there won't be any liquid water, but if it's too close, it will of course be sucked into the black hole by the gravitational forces. It's definitely a pretty crazy idea, but it is possible that there could be some life in this situation. In our number 5 spot today, we have fossilized microbes. Another piece of controversial evidence that came from Mars was announced in 1996. NASA scientists announced that they had potentially found what appeared maybe fossilized microbes in a lump of Martian rock. It is likely that this rock came off during some sort of Mars collision and just casually floated around the solar system for 15 million years before landing in Antarctica in 1984. Just casual space stuff. After analyzing the rock, it was revealed that it contained organic molecules and small specks of mineral magnetite, which is sometimes found in the bacteria on Earth. And upon further analysis with an electron microscope, it was claimed that there were signs of nanobacteria. Since then, some claim that the magnetite wasn't that similar to those found in bacteria, and there is a belief that the signs of nanobacteria could have been grown in a lab. In our number 4 spot today, we have UFO footage. Remember last year when the Navy released footage of UFOs, but we were in a global pandemic, so we didn't really have time to freak out about it? Well, let's freak out about it now, because what the heck was captured on those videos? The US Navy released footage last year where they had captured video of some sort of wingless aircraft that was traveling at hypersonic speed. Of course, people are wary to believe that this is true signs of alien life and alien visitors, but the thing is, we simply just don't really know what this is. We know it's not something that is known to us yet, so this could definitely be a sign of some sort of alien life, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see. In our number 3 spot today, we have this bacterial experiment. So we've talked a bit on today's list about how we tend to think of life only being able to exist on other planets that are similar to ours with a similar atmosphere within a certain distance of a star, but we've also discussed how this more narrow thinking might not be the best scenario. On Earth, most living creatures require oxygen to live, but the problem with a lot of planets is that there's far more hydrogen and helium. Last year, scientists decided to take 2 different bacteria. One was E. coli, which can be found in the guts of humans, and ordinary yeast, which is used in things like bread and beer. With these two bacteria, they tried to see if they could live in different environments. When placed within flasks that contained either pure hydrogen or pure helium, they still managed to grow, just at a slower pace. This evidence goes to show that there might be living organisms that we haven't found yet because we are just looking in the wrong places. In our number 2 spot today, we have the fact that they might have died off. This one is a bit disappointing, to be honest, but it basically is just a theory that it's probably pretty likely that there were aliens at some point, but since the universe is so old, they might have already died out. All life and cultures rise and fall, and researchers put together a model last year that would give more insight into the likelihood of this theory. They took things into account like sun-like stars that are not too close or too far from planets that are similar to Earth, as well as how frequently there are deadly radiation blasting supernovas, which of course would prove to be a huge problem for life forms, as well as the time that it takes for intelligent life to evolve, provided all the conditions are right. And once the evolution has taken place, how long would it take for a tool-bearing form of life to then destroy itself? That's a lot of factors to consider, and through all of this, it was found that the highest likelihood of life before ours in the Milky Way emerged around 5.5 billion years ago, which would place that before our planet was even formed. This, of course, would have provided plenty of time for all of the events I just mentioned to have occurred. I hope this one isn't true, because I really do hope that there are aliens out there. In our number 1 spot today, we have Europa. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for the red color. The surface of the moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions and that also have a red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place.
You're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the 2 fishermen. On October 11th, 1973, 2 friends, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, decided to go out fishing on a river in Mississippi. That's when a big bright light came out of nowhere. Parker reported, and I quote, "It was a blinding light. It was hard to tell with the light so bright, but it looked like it was shaped like a football. I would say, just estimating, that it was about 80 foot. It made very little sound, and it was just a hissing noise." But it gets weirder. He then claims that 3 legless creatures came out of the vessel and towards the 2. They described them as having mitten-shaped claws. One was necklace and gray, the other was more feminine. The friends started to freak out, and that's when these creatures wrapped their hands around their neck. Upon doing so, they calmed down. Parker thinks that they were injected with something, and that's why they immediately calmed down. After that, he claims that they went on board the vessel and were experimented on. When they got out of there, they alerted the police, who alerted the military. In fact, the 2 men were interrogated a number of times because of how wild their story was. Moving on to number 4, we have the mutilated sergeant. This story is one that genuinely freaks me out. So back in 1956, an American Air Force Sergeant, Jonathan P. Leavitt, and Major William Cunningham were out collecting the debris from a recent missile launch in New Mexico. While doing so, the 2 separated and decided to go their own ways. After a while, Major William heard his sergeant let out a loud scream. As he rushed towards him, he saw the sergeant being lifted up by a UFO, then pulled him inside the craft before zooming away. When his colleagues found William, he was in complete shock from what he had saw, and he was taken to the hospital. Of course, no one believed him. They were like, "There's no way that he was abducted by a UFO, okay." But after researching, they did find that an unidentified object was present on their radar at the time of the abduction. Now, what happened to the abducted man? Well, 3 days later, his body was found 10 miles away. It was severely mutilated and drained of blood. Isn't that freaky? So it seems like he was literally abducted by aliens and then they killed and ate him or something. What makes this even more suspicious is that the government reports on this just suddenly vanished into thin air. Moving on to number 3, we have pilot Frederick Valentine. On October 21st, 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentine was partaking in a 125 nautical mile training flight when he disappeared into thin air. Now, it's important to note that Frederick was a very experienced pilot. So around 7:06 p.m. that night, he radioed his crew saying that an unidentified craft was following him. He described it as having 4 bright lights with a shiny metallic exterior. His final words were, "It is hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then his signal cut out. Frederick or his craft were never seen again. Now, many people believe that he was shot down or abducted by a UFO. In fact, an unidentified farmer in the area said that he saw a UFO nearly 90 feet in length hovering above his farm. He saw this during the morning of Frederick's disappearance. He then said that he also saw a plane stuck to the UFO leaking oil. Moving on to number 2, we have Terrell Copeland. In 2007, former United States Marine Terrell Copeland had his first experience with an alien. He was in his apartment when he saw an orb of light outside. He said, and I quote, "It was just a big ball of light. It wasn't moving. One was solid white. The other was directly across the street from it, up 300 feet above ground, and was changing colors very rapidly." The next thing he remembers is feeling as though something was wrong and he passed out. When he woke up, he heard someone entering his apartment. The person was moving the doorknob and scratching at the door trying to get in. He tried getting up from his bed, but he was completely paralyzed. He tried to reach for a weapon that he had, but that's when he heard a voice through the door tell him, "You don't need that weapon. We won't harm." When he finally was able to move, he lost 4 hours of his time. He believes that he was abducted by aliens. He said that he remembers being in a room with a woman who was definitely not human. He said, and I quote, "She had the typical black eyes you hear about. She had an elongated skull, and that startled me. And the next memory I have is me standing on my balcony waving at this cylinder-shaped ship." That's freaky. Do any of you guys have a good alien abduction story? Let me know in the comments below. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Boy Scouts. On August 19th, 1952, a scoutmaster and his Boy Scouts were on their way home from a retreat when they encountered a bright flash near West Palm Beach, Florida. The Scouts master originally thought it was a downed plane or a car accident, so he pulled over and got out to help. He told the Scouts to stay in the car and alert someone if he didn't return in 15 minutes. So he got out with his flashlight and an axe and went towards where he saw the bright lights. This ended up taking him to a wooded area. About 4 minutes in, he started to smell something very nauseating. Then he felt like he was being watched by somebody. The next thing he remembers is feeling heat on the top of his body. He looked up and saw a hovering, glowing object above him. He started to back away from the craft when he heard a noise like metal against metal. A hatch then opened and he saw a red flare come out towards him. The next thing he knew, he was unconscious. When he awoke, he was leaning against a tree but was completely blind. His eyes had been burned by the light. When authorities found him, he was incoherent, terrified, and freaking out. Stories like this trip me out because, like, if it wasn't an alien or a UFO, then what was it, you know?
Next up, we have Barney and Betty Hill's extraterrestrial encounter, which took place on September 19th of 1961 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where the couple claimed to have been abducted by aliens. The ordeal started when the pair saw a bright light in the sky around 10:30 p.m. while driving home after a night out. Betty asked Barney to stop the car so that they could get a better look. He did, and then pulled out a pair of binoculars. What they saw was a massive, oddly shaped spacecraft with multicolored lights. They tried to drive away, but the spaceship, which they believed to have been at least 40 feet long, followed them, getting closer and closer until it was hovering directly in front of the pair's car. Barney claims he was able to clearly make out 6 to 8 humanoid figures standing on the ship who instructed Barney and Betty not to move, but rather to just keep looking towards the ship. The next thing the pair remembered, they had driven 35 miles away from their destination with no recollection of doing so. They tried to write down as much as they could about the experience on their way home, but their memories quickly became fragmented. It wasn't until years later, under hypnosis, that the pair separately both recalled being taken onto the ship and then separated from one another and examined by the humanoid alien life forms. In the days after the incident, however, both Betty and Barney's watches stopped working, and Barney noticed tiny, circles on the back of his truck, and when he put his compass near them, it went haywire. So, I'm not saying they were telling the truth, but I think they might have been telling the truth.
This next story is very outlandish, but it's an entertaining story, and I haven't talked about it before, so Here it goes. Back in 2021, Angelina Lynn Johnston held a news conference in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Johnston claims to be a former retired defense intelligence officer who had an encounter with various alien species at a secret base in the Mojave Desert. She claimed that in January of 2010, a few years before she ran as a Democrat candidate for South Dakota Senate, she had met up with a couple in South Carolina who ended up taking her to this secret base. She didn't provide details on exactly where the base was in the desert, but said that she would be taking an astronaut along with a few scientists to the base, which had been built into the side of a mountain. She described seeing various alien species, including one that looked a bit like a praying mantis type creature, and that the beings all spoke to her through telepathy.
Next up, we have the Exeter incident, which took place in Exeter, New Hampshire in 1965 and actually inspired a best-selling novel, Incident at Exeter: Unidentified Flying Objects Over America Now, by John G. Fuller. Not sponsored. One evening in Exeter, a police officer patrolling Highway Route 101 stopped to check on a woman parked on the side of the road. When he asked her what was wrong, she answered in breathless hysterics. She claimed that a large red flying object with flashing lights had been chasing her. Just a few hours later, the police heard a similar story from another man, a hitchhiker who claimed to have seen 5 bright lights in the sky while walking along Route 150. He told officers that they had been about 100 feet away from where he had stood, and he watched as they hovered over a home before moving over to the airspace above a large field, and then disappearing and reappearing several times. Curious, one of the policemen went with the hitchhiker back to the spot where he claimed to have seen the UFOs, and sure enough, there it was. And another officer arrived shortly after to see the exact same thing. 5 bright lights high up in the sky disappearing into and reappearing from the trees over and over again. And then, over the next few weeks, authorities in Exeter received almost 60 other reports of UFO sightings in the area. So, if you like aliens and UFOs and Exeter was not on your bucket list, you might want to rethink that decision.
Finally, we have a case where 3 UFOs hijacked a pilot's plane in midair. This is about as disturbing a close encounter as it gets, as this man just narrowly escaped death. The pilot's name is Carlos de los Santos. In 1975, he'd been flying back to Mexico City. It was just another routine flight until it wasn't. Carlos spotted something on his right wing. It was this silver disc-like object about 13 feet in length. It was just right on top of the wing. Then he saw an identical object on top of his left wing. And as if that wasn't enough, a third object appeared, and this one was heading straight for him. In a panic, Carlos tried to steer his plane away, but the controls weren't responding. Luckily, the object just missed him though. He frantically radioed air traffic control, explaining that he'd lost control and was surrounded by these strange disc objects. And then, to his complete and utter horror, the plane suddenly veered completely off course. It was now ascending higher and higher up into the sky. Carlos had absolutely no control over the plane now. But then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the strange objects flew away. And miraculously, thankfully, Carlos regained control of the aircraft.
In our number 5 spot today, we have They May Already Be Here. Okay, this one is for my conspiracy theorists out there. This is just the theory that maybe we can't find aliens because they've already found us and are actually walking among us, and we just don't know. I'm not quite sure the logistics of this one because I am definitely a human, and no alien who's posing as a human has ever revealed themselves to me personally, but I can't speak for everyone. It's possible that if this is true, aliens might be waiting for the right time to let us know that they've been walking around with us, or there may already be some lucky people out there who already know. I know a lot of us would be quite frightened of aliens if we did find concrete proof of their existence, and it might be likely that they're afraid of us as well. And if they are more intelligent than us and were able to find us first, they might just be testing out the waters to see what humans really think of them before letting us in on their secrets. So if you meet a stranger who starts asking you a bunch of questions about aliens, you might want to think twice next time. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Chicago UFO. UFO. This UFO sighting comes from November 7th, 2006 and was at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Flight 446 was getting ready to head to North Carolina when an employee from United Airlines that was on the tarmac noticed a dark gray metallic aircraft hovering over one of the gates. After this, 11 other employees and even a few people who didn't work there saw this gray saucer floating around 4:15 p.m. The people who saw it explained that it hovered above the gate for around 5 minutes before it just shot itself upwards and broke through the clouds, leaving a hole where you could see the blue sky. The strangest thing, however, is that this flying saucer did not show up on the radar, so the Federal Aviation Administration just called it a weather phenomena and would not investigate it, despite there being around 15 witnesses who all saw the same thing. This story, however, became the most read story on the Chicago Tribune's website and even went international because it certainly is very interesting. In our number 3 spot today, we have light shifts. In the later half of 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a newly discovered star. This star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before passing right through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a similar kind of structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. Again, like many things, it's just a theory, but a very compelling one at that. In our number 2 spot today, we have the USS Princeton UFO. This UFO sighting comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object, and this one would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Black Aces Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 went over in 2 fighter jets in order to kind of scope out the situation, and when they arrived, they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. Like when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of fighter jets. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what this was, but I'm sure a lot of us are thinking the same thing. In our number 1 spot today, we have radio signals. Basically, we're getting radio signals from somewhere, but we just aren't quite sure what exactly is going on there. It started in 2007 when we began getting what are called fast radio bursts, and they are a totally mysterious phenomena to scientists. These bursts are only a few milliseconds long, but they emit more energy than the sun does in 24 hours, which is just a statement that my brain struggles to comprehend. All of this is already super cool and very interesting, but here's an even crazier thing about them. The main thing we know about these bursts is that they are coming from outside of the Milky Way. They're coming from outside of our own galaxy. Space is the coolest and most unbelievable thing. This obviously had led a lot of experts to believe that it could be coming from an advanced civilization that is quite far away, and they may be trying to contact us, but we just don't have the technology to interpret the signals. Maybe one day scientists will figure out a way to accept whatever message it is they're trying to send, or maybe one day we'll get a visit from them and they'll be mad at us for not answering their messages. Either way, it's all very cool and very interesting.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Steve Buscemi, and I just want to start off by saying that he's an amazing actor, like totally underrated, and I'm so happy talking about him because also fun fact, we share the same birthday, so I just feel this connection to him. So Steve, if you're watching this, I want to be your friend. Anyways, people often judge Steve based off of his looks. I mean, I think he was on the list of like ugliest people in Hollywood or something like that, which like, that is mean. How did they get away with that? That's super hurtful. Lists like that just shouldn't exist, okay? But anyways, due to his unique appearance, people think that Steve is out of this world. They think that he's an alien or a cryptoid or something like that. There's even a bunch of memes out there making fun of Steve saying that he's an alien. I personally don't think he's one. Like, if we're judging based off looks, that's just mean. He's a great guy. But I still put him on this list for all you people out there that think that he could be one. Watch him actually be an alien, I'm like defending him. In our fourth spot, we have Tilda Swinton, who, might I add, is another incredible actor. Tilda's range is unbelievable. She is unrecognizable in some roles. Like, she goes from playing the White Witch in the Chronicles of Narnia, to the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, to Thora Thacker in Hail Caesar. She's just so versatile. And that's why some people think that she's an alien, because the ease in which she can transform her appearance and look like a completely different person, or the ease in which she can change her personality and behave like a completely different person. I mean, I just call that good acting, but then other people are like, aliens! Also, people think that she's an alien because she has a unique appearance. Again, let's not judge a book by its cover here. It seems like the people trying to behave normally are the ones we should be concerned about, okay? In our third spot, we have Bill Gates. I wish I had the amount of wealth that Bill Gates had, and now he's single, so Bill, hit me up. Just kidding. You're too old for me. Anyways, according to some people, Bill is an alien. How come aliens always have to be the richest people? Like, seriously, you got Mark, you got Jeffrey Bezos, and now Bill. How come all the alien dudes are rich? Anyways, the main reason why people think that he's an alien is due to his advanced knowledge on computers and technology. So aliens are supposed to be highly advanced creatures. They created highly advanced spacecrafts to travel throughout space and to Earth. Maybe Bill was sent from space to help advance human life. And then he liked it so much here that he decided to stick around. Or maybe he got too famous and was like, oh crap, I can't just disappear from the public eye. They're gonna wonder where I went. And now he's kind of stuck on Earth against his will. Moving on to number 2, we have Stephen Colbert. Honestly, he's the last person I would think to be an alien. But that's a good thing, right? It means that he's being stealthy about it. It's always the people you least expect. So a woman named Liz Brown came up with proof as to why she believes Stephen is an alien. Her first point is his intelligence. She said, and I quote, "A recent report showed that viewers of the Colbert Report are more well informed about political and social issues than viewers of legitimate news programs on ABC or CNN. Most alien experts agree that our interplanetary friends have a level of intelligence far beyond human capabilities. Of course, this could also mean that regular Colbert Report viewers are being groomed for abduction." End of quote. Imagine that, Stephen using his show to gain fans and then abduct them and use them in tests run by aliens. The next point she made is his immunity from diseases. She said that she has never seen him get sick. She said, and I quote, "What kind of regular human beings can consume Bud Light Lime on a regular basis on air and still not get sick?" End quote. She's kind of got a point there. She then also went on to talk about Stephen's love for space. In 2009, he made a public campaign telling his viewers to vote for the new treadmill on the International Space Station to be named after him. Why did he want this so badly? Well, it could be that this was a way to send a message to his alien friends out there, telling them like, we did it, I'm in control of the humans, this is proof. Crazy, isn't it? Makes you really think. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Elon Musk. Why does Elon Musk want to go to Mars so bad? Honestly, he just wants to return to his home planet. He has announced a number of times that he wants to retire and die on Mars. He probably hates it here on Earth and is dying to get back. Let's look at more evidence. This dude invented the Tesla, like he's super intelligent. First off, he got into the electrical vehicle business, which only represents 0.1% of all cars sold. Looking at that, it would seem like a bad thing to get into, but nonetheless, he did and he succeeded. Why? Because he's got alien capabilities to not only see into the future, but also create high-tech things, like Teslas. Someone else added that his end goal is to save Earth. He's seen into the future and how bad global warming gets. So he's trying to reduce global emissions through his cars. Maybe make them cheaper then. Not only that, but on a number of occasions he has tweeted out some suspicious things. Someone tweeted at him asking if he was an alien, and he said, obviously. So, he just admitted it, okay? I know he's just joking, but still. Another time he tweeted saying aliens built the pyramids. I mean, he was probably one of the aliens there building them alongside the Egyptians. In the end, everything he is doing on Earth is to save us, and then, help himself get back to his home planet. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with George Gurdjieff. George was a 20th century mystic and philosopher. He was known for teaching something known as the fourth way. Basically, he believed that humans had a way to become more elite, that we just needed to awaken to a higher state of consciousness, and then we would be able to achieve full human potential. So the fourth way taught his disciples all about this. He talked about how we need to free our soul and increase and focus our intention to prevent absent-mindedness. From there, we would be a step closer to becoming a more elite form of humans. Now, what's eerie is that he never talked about the origins of his teachings. He wanted it all to be discreet. In fact, there are no traces of the schools he even went to. So what's the deal with this guy? Was he an alien trying to help humans advance or what? Moving on to number 4, we have Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was a great, intelligent, and super talented artist and inventor. In fact, some believe that he was a little too intelligent for his time. So they believe he was an alien that was sent to Earth from space to help humans advance. For example, he proposed many modern day inventions in the late 1400s. That's hundreds of years before they were actually created. He came up with the idea of a tank, helicopters, submarines, self-propelled carts, aka cars, and machine guns. Maybe he already knew all about these inventions because aliens, being the advanced species that they are, already created them. Da Vinci's goal was then to share his insight on these inventions with the world. The only question is, why would the aliens want to help us? Coming in at number 3, we have Amelia Earhart. Amelia was a well-known American aviator who set numerous flying records. She is one of the most well-known explorers, and her disappearance has caused ongoing wonder. In 1937, Amelia set out with her navigator, Fred Noonan, to fly around the world. They were last heard from on July 2nd, 1937. 2 years later, she was declared dead. However, they never found her body. They just assumed that their plane crashed somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Nonetheless, they still spent 15 years looking for the pair. In fact, searching for Earhart was the largest and most expensive search in American history. Now, there's this absolutely wild theory out there that Amelia and Fred were both aliens, and they actually set out on this mission with no intentions of ever coming back. They actually needed to get back to their home planet, which is why their plane or bodies have never been found to this day. In our second spot today, we have the magical healer. John D. Reese of Ohio was known for having the touch of God. Just by touching people, he had the power to heal a number of injuries and maladies. It all started in 1887. One of his friends fell off of a ladder and seriously injured his spine. His physician took a look at it and declared he had a severe spinal strain, but it was miraculously cured one day when Reese, for some reason, ran his fingers up and down the man's back. Instantaneously, the man's pain was gone and he was able to get up and move around no problem. Another person he healed was a shortstop of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He suffered a bad back injury mid-game and actually had to be carried out from the field. Again, John ran his fingers up and down his spine and he was magically cured. He also cured a politician's weak hand and wrist from overuse. Doctors told him he needed to rest his hand for weeks to get the strength back, but John touched his hand and it was instantly better. So this dude must have been an alien with magical powers or something, because how else could he cure people in an instant? And in our number 1 spot today, we have Count of Saint Germain. This guy is undeniably one of the most mysterious men in history. So Saint Germain was a philosopher that apparently had the ability to teleport, levitate, and walk through walls. Not only that, he's said to be immortal. Apparently he discovered the secret of alchemy and created an elixir that would grant eternal life to whoever drank it. Now, we don't know much about him. Some people say he was born in the 1690s, whereas other people believe he was around during the birth of Jesus. One thing that's certain, he has appeared a number of times throughout history when he should have been dead. For example, it was 1760 and Saint Germain was invited for a soiree at the home of Madame de Pompadour, the mistress of King Louis XV of France. Now the Countess was shocked when she met him because he looked exactly the same, which was impossible because she met the Count in 1710 in Venice. When she met him, he was 45 years old. He shouldn't have been alive, but there he was and he had not aged a day. She was totally in shock by this, as anyone would be. Over the next 40 years, Saint Germain traveled all throughout Europe and never aged a day. Most recently in 1972, a man named Richard Chanfray claimed that he was the one and only Count. He even went on to turn lead into gold on a camp stove to prove he was this legendary Count with magical powers. So due to the fact that this dude has magical powers and never ages and seems to be immortal, people believe that he is in fact an alien. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments below which one of these people creeped you out the most, and do you believe in aliens? Let me know in the comments below. Now, speaking of comments, let's move on to our comment shout out portion. I'll be shouting out comments from the video Top 10 Dark Things Astronauts Refuse to Talk About, Part 3. Brother Bear commented, Lindsay is serving us pro weirdo realness and I'm here for it. Sass it up, queen. Yes, I'm weird, that's all. Penny Bork commented, I don't know about space, never been there. I do know you're glowing, Lindsay, and your eyes are looking quite alluring. Maybe because I'm an alien, who knows? But thank you, that's sweet. And Chaos Abaddon commented, also the smell of sulfur is supposed to be the signs of evil spirits or demons. But yeah, smell space? But yeah, space, smell, sounds fishy as hell. I think that's what they meant. Maybe there's demons in space. I mean, there's demons here. There could be demons underwater. There could be demons on different planets and demons in space. We don't even know, man. Alright guys, that's all the comments I'm shouting out for today's video. Make sure to comment something down below for a chance to be featured in my next comment shout out. And as always, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to Most Amazing Top 10 for more amazing videos. I've been your host, Lindsay Ivan, and I'll see you when I see ya.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about strange anomalies that were found in the Amazon rainforest. We have delved deep into the mysteries of the jungle to see what we could find, and the answers might shock you. What are you waiting for? Click the video now to find out more.